Morning, everybody, and thanks for logging in and listening to me for half an hour. I can entertain you, inform you, and tell you a bit about my slant on racing and some of my personal experiences. I'm Deputy Chairman of the Thoroughbred Breeders Association, which represents all of the breeders' interests. We sit on all of the major racing boards in one form or another. I sit on the racing group. I sit on the board of the Thoroughbred Owner and Breeder magazine, and that we generally represent the interests of the breeders throughout the United Kingdom, and that we also are responsible for the legacy of the industry. And I'll talk a bit more about that. I'm also an owner breeder and have been for donkey's years, or it seems to me. I'd rather not say how many years, but I think it's probably over 40. And that, no, I don't look my age, I hope. And so let me tell you how I got there. I'm a village policeman's son, born too many years ago, as I said, to count, and brought up in a small village in Hertfordshire called Datchworth. Secondary school educated. I'm cricket mad and played serious cricket, played serious rugby for a while. And that I left school when I was 17. By the time I was 20, I was naive enough or stupid enough to start my own business. And that eventually led me into a business called the Perfume Shop, which I started and founded, and that we ended up with 150 shops throughout the United Kingdom. Changed the way that fine fragrance was retailed. We, to all intents and purposes, opened the duty-free shop on the high street. That I was in charge of a number of department store business. I'm a retailer. That's what I am. 10 years ago, somebody, as they said in The Godfather, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And so the business was sold, and that I had time on my hands, and that I then started to, in some way, try and contribute to the racing industry, which has been a big part of my life, all my life. We'll come back to the village. I think there's a question about how I got into the game in the first place, and that, and so I'll save that for a little bit longer, but we'll tell you shortly. But let me talk to you about the responsibilities I have in the industry, firstly. So, Deputy Chairman of the Thoroughbred Breeders Association. As I said to you, that we're responsible for all of the breeders in the United Kingdom, and there are 3,318 of them, or there was the last time we did an economic impact study, which was 12 months ago. Those 3,318 breeders produce 4,778 foals in that year. That, as a general rule, we breed about 4,500 foals in this country every year. Interesting, the racing industry that we all know and love requires an entry of 9,000 foals, 9,000 new horses every year, to keep turning at the rate that it does, with horses retiring, horses being sold, and so on and so forth. So that you need somewhere between 18 and 20,000 horses in training to make the wheels go round. The British breeding industry is a world-class industry, and that lots of people claim that, but there is absolutely no doubt that, despite what you're told in other directions, that the British breeding industry is the best in the world. It's a world-class industry. From those 4,500 odd foals that we breed every year, we breed 24% of the world's best racehorses. And that's a really big number. That's a quarter of everything that runs in the world, is in terms of the best racehorses are bred on these shores. To give you something to benchmark that against, the Irish, who maybe promote themselves as the home of the horse, they produce 18% of the world's best racehorses from a foal crop of 9,000 a year. They produce twice as many foals in Ireland as we do here. And that the Irish industry is totally reliant on the British racing industry for its product, to sell its product and to race its product. Yes, it has an industry in Ireland, but it's very limited in terms of the fixture list and the number of races, and that if they didn't sell their horses here every year, and they wouldn't have much of an industry. And the industry produces something like $500 million of contribution to GDP. So from a government perspective, it's a very worthwhile industry. And of that, 19,000 jobs are dependent upon the thoroughbred breeding industry alone. And that's 10,000 direct that are employed as in feed merchants, in on studs, and the like, and blacksmiths and vets and things. And then in addition to that, there are 9,000 jobs that are interdependent upon the industry. And that those 9,000 jobs, you know, it's the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. It's the village shops. It's the petrol stations. It's the fencing contractors, and so on and so forth. So it's a really important industry, and that even more important when you take those 19,000 jobs, they're rural jobs, and that they're unlikely to ever be replaced. So that's the good news. The bad news is that 66% of breeders currently lose money. That if you sell a horse in book 1 of Tattersalls, you're likely to make a 60,000 profit. If you sell a horse in book 4, you're likely to make a £19,000 loss. It's a precarious industry, and that we rely very much on hobby breeders and owner breeders to keep sustaining the losses and to make sure that we get the product. And that it's interesting that when you look at the statistics, if you look at the big races, that it's almost always, in big race terms, it's owner breeders, the Juddmonts, the Godolphins, the Cheveley Parks, the Aga Khan, and so on, who produce the horses that win the Group 1 races. Yeah, there are exceptions, but I think that as a rule of thumb, you could say that horses that race above a mile are the owner breeder's speciality. Horses that race below a mile are the commercial breeders. Why is that? Well, there is a suggestion, and that is one I don't agree with, that the commercial market and that the industry wants fast horses, and that they buy these fast 2-year-olds, and that they want them to go on. And of course, they don't always. But again, if you look at the racing program, you'll see that there is a very heavy bias on the 5, 6, 7, and 8 furlong races as opposed to the distance races. And one of the things that we're trying to do at the TBA is to make sure that the diversity of the program, i.e. that we achieve a broad mix of distances, and is still sustained, because the industry is a great industry, and that we've got a legacy product that we need to protect, and that protecting that means that we will still want Gold Cup horses, and we still want horses that win the King's Stand or sprint races like that. Personally, I like to breed distance horses. The family that I've got hasn't had a 2-year-old winner in it since 2006, and so as a consequence, what I'm trying to do is to breed a Derby winner. Have I got near it? Yes, no, maybe. I've had a very, very good filly called High Calypso who won the Park Hill, and she wasn't far off being an Oaks filly, and she broke the track record winning the Park Hill. I had an extremely good horse called Rob Roy, who was a mile and a quarter horse. He was second in a champion, should have won a Breeders' Cup mile. I had another good horse called Teamster. he was the first horse that of consequence that I think that I bred, and that he was a tip-top 2 miler and was odds-on favourite for the Ascot Gold Cup, and that there was only one thing that could stop him, and that was soft ground, and that he absolutely tipped down the Wednesday night before the Gold Cup, and he finished fourth in the Gold Cup, and that I think that was one of my biggest disappointments on the track. I had a really good stayer last couple of years called Mekong, but so that you can see there's a generalisation, you know, and it is a generalisation. I breed horses. I'm trying to breed a Derby winner. That's what I want to do, and that's what I try and do. How did I get into this game? Well, let's go back to the village that I was brought up into, Datworth in Hertfordshire. And that, as I told you, I was the adopted son of a village policeman. Wasn't much money around in those days. Village policemen didn't get paid much money. And that I had a paper round. I also, somehow or other, and I think that horses are genetic, they're in your blood, but somehow or other, I used to hang around the local riding school just because I wanted to be close to horses, and I didn't know why I did. But the kids that were at the riding school, and kids had their own ponies, and they could go to pony club and things like that, and I could never do anything like that. And that the prospects of me ever owning a pony of my own were so remote, it couldn't be true. I remember when I was sort of 8 or 9, the Daily Mail ran a competition for the Ideal Home exhibition, Win Your Own Pony, and I was convinced I was going to win it. And I can remember doing it with Ethel, who was my foster mother, and being absolutely certain that the next morning that there would be a pony in the field opposite waiting for me, but it didn't happen. So I had this paper round, and I wanted to have a point of difference, and I've always been confident and swum against the tide. So that one of the things that I did with my paper round is that I read the back pages, the sports pages. As I said, I was cricket mad, rugby mad, and sport mad in general. And at the time, Paddy Prendergast, who I didn't know from Adam, was training a 2-year-old called Santa Claus. And that just because of the name, it caught my imagination. And I followed Santa Claus for the next 12 months, and he won the Derby. And I was hooked. And I also had my own specific part of a horse. I could talk about racehorses, where the kids who did the egg and spone races and the bending races and things like that couldn't. The other thing that I was an avid reader. And so if you can see around me that I'm sitting in my study and I'm absolutely full of books, and every wall is full of bookcases. And I love the history of the game. And so that I started to read and to become knowledgeable, or in my terms, knowledgeable. You know, that it was the old days, the Fred Archer days, all of the coups that used to go on, and all of the history of the sport I was fascinated with. And that it became a big part of my life, and that it was absolute then that as soon as I made any money, and it never occurred to me that I wasn't going to make any money, and it never occurred to me that I wasn't going to be successful. So that when I was 20, as I said, I started my own business, and that as soon as I learned not to lose money, and as soon as I learned to start, the trick to making money is actually keeping it. I bought a filly. I bought a Clairon filly out of a Ballymos mare, and she was by Clairon out of Verbally. That was the first one, and I called her Slanging Match, and I thought that was a really clever name. And that I leased her to a trainer called David Tom, and he ran her. She got placed third, and then she broke a pedal bone, and that became the subject of an insurance claim, and I got 1,500 quid, and I invested from there and went on from there. Bits and pieces to start with, buying a filly here and a filly there, and I wasn't making much progress at all until I bought a filly for a lot of money in those days. And I mean, I was sort of 30 then, and that I spent 25,000 quid on a filly in Ireland by Guillaume Tell, who was by Nashua, and I just like the bloodline out of a good Irish family that was producing decent winners, and called her Rosetta Stone. And she won one race for me, and then I put her in foal to Final Straw to start with, and the first result was a horse that couldn't get out of its own way. He was so slow, called Jack Straw, and he went to Italy. But the second foal was a foal called Blind Faith, and he won a nursery, and he won a decent handicap at Newbury, a decent 3-year-old handicap at Newbury. And Michael Stout trains for me, and Roger Charlton as well. And at the end of the year, Michael Stout said to me, sell this horse. And I said, yeah, but he's only a 3-year-old. We can carry on with it. He said, sell the horse. And so I sold him. And I had his full brother, by known fact, again out of Rosetta Stone. We raced him. He was third first time out as a 2-year-old. And then he won first time out as a 3-year-old, got beat at Chester, then won again at Kempton, and won at Haydock. And that we're at the back end of the season. And I said, well, we sell this horse, don't we? And he said, pardon? Michael Stout said, pardon? I said, we're going to sell him. He said, we don't. And I said, but he's the full brother to the one we sold last year. He said, this horse has got a different mind. And that first time out as a 4-year-old, he was fourth at Kempton. And then he won the Cigaro at Ascot, absolutely blitzed the field in Henry the 7th at Sandown. And as I told you, went on to be favourite for their Gold Cup. He got beat in the Gold Cup, as I told you, because of soft ground, won one more race, and then he went to stud in Ireland. Other horses I had a big share in a horse called Arctic Owl, who was pretty good and went on and ran in the Melbourne Cup. And I've had 2 runners in Melbourne Cups. One finished stone last, and one finished fourth, and that was Arctic Owl. I was developing my breeding at the time, and that because of the success of my business, I was able to put more money into it. And I invested in 3 families, one of which is the family that I've still got now, and that's the Trev family. You'd all know Trev, who won 2 Arcs. It's Trillion and Triptyche. And that I had 2 other families, neither of which worked for me. And interestingly, one of them she was a half sister to the dam of Doremi and Too Darn Hot and all of that, and that she was by Sadler's Wells, and she couldn't breed a slow pony for me, and that she had all the best coverings. And it's amazing that Andrew Lloyd Webber had her immediate family, and all they do is produce top class winners, and that yet a sister out of the family couldn't do it. So it proves the old adage that breed to the best and hope for the best, and I think that's right. So the other 2 families didn't work for me, and again, I was talking to Michael Stout about it one evening, and he said, look, you're lucky to have one family that works. And so I thought that was right, and so that I've now got 3 half sisters, High Calypso, who won the Park Hill, and who was probably the best filly in 2007 in the UK. She won the Lily Langtry too, and 2 other races. I've got a Kingman filly, 2-year-old out of her that is with Michael Stout, called Red Hot Mama. She's bred a listed horse already by Oasis Dream, and she's in foal to See the Moon currently. I've got a half sister, Ship's Biscuit. Ship's Biscuit was equally as good a race mare as High Calypso, but she wouldn't put it in. She just she decided what she wanted to do, and she won once and was listed placed. But she's the dam of Mekong and Powwow. Powwow won 3 on the bounce, and Mekong was a good horse. He was bifrancal, so he should have been a good horse. That I sold him last year. She's in foal to New Approach, and that I've got a couple of horses out of her that I'm hopeful of, but because of this year, they've had to take a back seat. One's called Cochise, and he's by Intello, and that I wouldn't be surprised if he could win a really big staying race next year. And then I've got one other half sister who never raced, and she's by Invincible Spirit. She's called 3x3. So um, uh, usually I have 2 or 3 yearlings to go into training. This year I've got 3 yearlings. I've been using, I used Intello, I use See the Moon, I use New Approach. I use horses that are likely to get a mile and a half. One of the difficulties and the problems with that is that you do it and that you take the risk of getting a real slow coach. So far, I'm pleased with what I do. I'm disappointed. I've had a lot of Group 2 horses. Rob Roy should have won a Group 1. I think Calypso should have won a Group 1, and Teamster certainly should have won a Group 1. It's just the way that the cards fall for you. I mean, Rob Roy has beaten a head in the Champion, and that Kieran McAvoy said, "Sorry, I followed the wrong horse," and that the pace dropped away, and that we had to do too much of our own work. We were unlucky in the Breeders' Cup Mile with him. He should have won the Breeders' Cup Mile, but ifs and ands and pots and pans. Somebody once said to me that you never get depressed if you've got a yearling, because there's always something better around the corner, and I think that's probably right. So I'm not sure that I haven't bored you all for long enough about me. I love the game. I'm glad I'm putting something back into it. I think that the industry is very precariously based at the moment. COVID has not helped. We've probably got too many racecourses that the industry needs to consolidate. We probably need less racecourses and a programme that cuts costs. There is no doubt at all that the foal crops over the 2021, 2022 and 2023 are going to suffer. You may have seen, if you looked in the papers or the EBN or the TDN today, that the sales at Doncaster Year were 40% down, and that will have an impact on the foal crop. So our racing programme must consolidate over the next few years, and what we need to do is make sure that we continue to keep the strongest possible base so that we can recover from it. Will we recover? Yeah, we will. 2008, there was a bank crisis, and that had an 8-year effect on the recovery of the industry. It might take us 10 years this time to recover to what it was last year, but there are plenty of people in the industry that are determined to see that happen. So happy to have any of your questions, and I hope you've been interested in what I've had to say. Is there a horse currently in training that you wish would bred? Well, yeah, of course. You'd go for the Dual Art winner that Juddmonte have bred. I mean, that to have a filly like Enable is fantastic. But that's an obvious answer, isn't it? But I think it probably is the best answer. Yeah, Enable. That would do for me. And Peter Drabble, there used to be a saying in wrestling: if you have an enemy, give him a broodmare. Is that still true? I think it's right. I mean, that somebody said to me that how do you make a small fortune out of racehorses? Well, you start with a large one, and it continues to go back. I mean, I have spent fortunes in following this passion, and it is a passion, and it's an obsession. And do I think that I'll get there? Yeah, I do, because if I didn't think I'd get there, I'd give it up. Which stallion stock are catching my eye this year? I think that See the Moon looks as if he has the capacity to be a proper classic sire. Um, I, I think that he started off with a lower base of mares, and I think that as the mares to him improve, that I think he'd be one of my tips for the top. Um, do I have a standout memory in my time in racing? Um, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I was at Newmarket, and I was a Mill Reef fan, a big Mill Reef fan, and I saw. I went to Newmarket expecting Mill Reef to win the Guineas, and that I can remember him coming down the centre of the track, and he took on My Swallow, who was an unbeaten 2-year-old of David Robinson's, and he had won the French Triple Crown, I think, as of 2-year-old races, the Papin and the likes, and that there was also a horse of Vincent O'Brien's in it called Minsky, and he was one of the early Northern dancers, and that there was another horse there, and that seeing them, and I thought Mill Reef had got it. Then coming with a wet sail was Joe Mercer down the stands rail with Brigadier Gerard. I mean, that was an incredible day's racing for me, and that I still buzz about it now. I get a real buzz out of Group One races. That just the thrill to see. I mean, the difference between Group One horses and anything else is that the speed they go. I mean, they really do go quickly. Uh, what's important to me in terms of the owner breeder experience? Um, follow follow your own heart. That everybody's got a view about horses that use this side, use that side, go to this trainer, that trainer, the other trainer. Do what you think's right, and that it'll work out. Currently, I've done something that I'm not sure whether I was looking for an outcross for High Calypso. She's had plenty of Danehill on top of her, and I was looking for an outcross, and that Godolphin bought a horse over here called Sepoy, who was a top class Australian racehorse, and that I had him cover High Calypso, and that the result was a filly, and she has got gears, but she is the most bad-tempered, grumpy person that God has ever breathed life into, and that if we can persuade her to race, then she might be something. She's called Ibiza, by the way. The majority of races seem to be run at sprinters. Well, it's what I said to earlier on. It's because 60% of all of the horses bred are bred to be, in my terms, short-term horses. That they're here today and that they're gone tomorrow, and that they're there because there is a demand for them clearly, but they also create levy for the levy board. It does influence the game, but what we've got to do is that we've got to have diversity, because to lose races like the Ascot Gold Cup, to lose the Ledger, to lose the Derby. I mean, I do hear some false prophets suggest that we should reduce the Derby to 10 furlongs. No, we absolutely should not. One of the things that I've learned about the racing industry and the breeding industry in particular is stamina has more influence on the breed than speed. You cannot breed in stamina. These old families that we've got that have got this stamina, they are priceless, and that we absolutely need to keep them. So currently, I sit on a group that is enhancing the program for the Stayers program, and so I hope that in 50 years' time, the diversity will be still be the same. Favourite race course, I love Goodwood. I really do like Goodwood. It's because it's panoramic. It's a nice time of the year, and that the Goodwood week is a very, very good time. I like Newbury too, and I like Salisbury. Not wild about Newmarket Rowley Mile course. very much. I think the ground there gets very, very quick, very early in the season, and that I mean, Rob Roy ran in the 2000 Guineas, and that we thought he'd win the Guineas, and that I mean, it went rock hard, and that he got stress fracture as a consequence of it, and was out for almost the remainder of the year. So Goodwood and Newbury and Salisbury, I think, alike. Interestingly, the racecourses that I've had the most winners on are Bath and Windsor, would you believe? But I think I've probably had 6 each now. I've had somewhere. I'm moving towards around about 100 winners now, and that I'm ready to count them up soon. So that's 31 minutes. I've bored you long enough. I've appreciated your company. I hope I've been of interest to you, and that I hope if any of you see me on the racecourse or anywhere for that matter, you'll come up and say hello. Thank you for your time. Really appreciated the opportunity to talk to you. Good luck to all of you. Goodbye.